This is a continuation stream of the previous one with Khaled Safir, who has his YouTube channel, and Jim Bowden, who doesn't, and Carol, who does, who has helpfully read my book, Secular Quranism, available on Amazon. So I've given her this link. I'm expecting her to join me presently, but I wanted to say a few things about why it's a problem that Western men, supposedly of education, appear not to be able to understand what I'm saying, even though I have addressed all their issues. Now, obviously, we cannot expect Western men to be pleased that their moral and legal political system has crashed and burnt. Of course not. But once you face the facts, you will go to the next step of considering what is its best replacement. Sadly, we are nowhere near that because Western men refuse to even acknowledge the problem. And that is why they cling to their Christian identity and refuse to acknowledge the problem of not having a viable moral and legal political system. And that's why it's impossible to have a conversation with them. So, in the case of Jim Bowden of Australia, he's a lawyer, but he finds simple concepts almost impossible to understand. So, I've known him quite a few years because he's known for moaning on Luke Ford's channels as well as other people's. And maybe he only gets on people's channels when he's drunk and not making much sense, and obviously not taking in the information that is being given to him, even though he has the legal capacity to understand it. So, if your official religion is no longer working, you need to replace it with another. This has always been the case. There's nothing new about that. The more powerful religion replaces the less powerful one, and the more powerful the religion is, the more likely it is to be good at organized violence. And obviously, Christianity is better at organized violence than the Native American or the Chinese or the Indians or the well, Indonesia and Malaysia have been Muslim for quite a while, and they were taken over by Western imperialists. So there were obviously problems that they had, that they could not unite to defend themselves against the Western imperialists. It may be something to do with the weather or not being fully informed of the danger that was coming their way of Western imperialism. Maybe there was no way they could have matched the technology and the capacity of organized violence that Western imperialists had, because they are a very warlike race who fight each other at the drop of a hat over some doctrinal religion that they cannot now take seriously. So I'm saying that Christianity made the European extremely warlike because Christianity was such a schismatic religion that it is possible to disagree with someone else about its interpretation. Also, there were organic reasons for the failure of Christianity to do what it was supposed to do. What was Christianity supposed to do? Well, we must ask Constantine the Great, who was the Roman emperor responsible for the founding of the Roman Catholic Church. Obviously, he didn't change the Roman religion for the fun of it. He must have felt that the old imperial cult was failing. And of course, it was because Rome was riven by civil war during the time of Constantine as well as before he was born. It was riven by civil war between Roman generals who wanted to be Roman emperor. So we have heard that there were such events as the year of the 3 emperors and the year of the 5 emperors, recording the time when all these Roman generals decided to fight each other to become the ruler of Rome. So for a while under Constantine, things were okay. Things went very badly after Constantine died. His son was no good and was condemned to, I can't remember the Latin term for it, but he was condemned to be forgotten. And there were a few Roman emperors intervening, Julian the Apostate, who decided to go back to the old Roman imperial cult, but unsuccessfully, until finally in the year 380, the Edict of Thessalonica was passed by Emperor Theodosius, and the edict declared that anyone who wasn't a Trinitarian Christian would be prosecuted. And so Rome carried on until the 4th century when it fell to barbarians. But the Roman Empire didn't completely disappear because its remnant was the Roman Catholic Church. And whether people at the time liked it or not, it was still the most powerful idea and institution around. And eventually the conquerors of Rome, who were German tribes really, Christianized themselves and became part of a new reconstituted Roman Empire. Now, I don't know how many Westerners actually know this, but it cannot be denied that the Roman Empire declined and fell, and Christianity was propagated throughout Europe when European monarchs were Christianized and accepted the bargain of Rome, promising to defend their divine right to rule. And for a while, it worked when Rome, when the Pope in Rome defended the divine right to rule of European monarchs until the wars of the Reformation and the fall of Christendom in 1918. Carol is here.
Hey, Assalamu alaikum. How's it going?
Yeah, it's going well. Welcome back after that rather taxing stream we had earlier with Jim Bowden. What did you think of it?
Well, I didn't see the whole thing, so I don't know. I thought it was a little bit. I don't know what it is. It's pretty much nobody likes your idea, but they don't want to propose anything different. If he thinks, the Catholic Church is the answer, then how are they going to promote it to the point that it's going to change society. That's the part I don't understand what his thinking was on this. It wasn't quite clear to me.
Well, it never has been clear.
Mhm.
I mean, what can you do as a Christian? You could pass a Christian amendment. I mean, such things are possible. And the American Samoa did, in fact, pass a Christian amendment, didn't it? Declaring American Samoa to be a Christian republic.
Oh, well, you can do that with states, actually, in the United States, but you can't do it on federal level.
But Samoa is technically an independent country. I mean, I
Yeah.
know that since the American Civil War, there were attempts by Americans to try and pass a Christian amendment. I suppose they could have argued that, oh, we really do need a religion, and what religion are we going to have other than Christianity? But I suppose the problem remains that if you did pass a Christian amendment and Christianity became the official religion of America, then you'd have all these different Christians saying, Roman Catholicism, oh no, Episcopalianism, oh no, Calvinism, or Unitarian Christianity or Mormonism. And so, I suppose the logical thing would be, well, we have to have a Church of America, the way the Church of England, the way the English established the Church of England.
Yeah,
But
they're
then
not going to do
nobody
that
would,
here.
yeah, but nobody would believe in it because there's no advantage to being a new religion. People will say, "Oh, well, you just cooked up the idea yesterday, and we don't believe in your cooked up nonsense." So the appeal of any religion would be, well, it has some sort of track record and it's been around for a bit, because nobody wants to be a cult, because cults are always persecuted by the mainstream religion.
Well, this is what I'm looking at. If your idea, and this is what some of these people seem to be saying, is that Islam is taking over Europe and America, right? It's going to take over, it's winning, it's going to take over. Why don't they take over the ideology itself? That's what I'm saying. If they're that paranoid about it, just do what they've always done in the past. Take over the ideology themselves. Every single
and control the interpretation.
Yeah, every single
With the
group.
U.S. Supreme Court.
Yeah, every single group of Christians that came in after the Protestant Rebellion basically said, no, it's going to be like this. They reinterpreted Christianity themselves. And so you can do that. The West can do that too with Islam. They could do the same thing. I'm not necessarily promoting. I don't want a bunch of emails from Muslims saying I'm trying to destroy Islam or something like this, but there's no reason why people in the West can't reinterpret Islam itself, and there's no reason that the interpretation of Islam cannot have a view of secular and religious life as being somewhat separate, or at least definable as categories. There's no foregone conclusion that it must be thought of in that way. They're trying to say that Islam doesn't have a separation between secular and religious. Well, okay, that's in theory, but in practice we see that's not true. Because you can't. Islam does not have a rule for every single thing. It came in the 500s or so, Prophet Muhammad. If he came then, obviously it doesn't have clear rules about modern day living. It doesn't have any technology rules. It doesn't have any of these things. So it's just not true.
Well, I mean, the thing is, if you want to think of any religion that we might have heard of, which has any kind of a track record, what they have in common is that they support patriarchy, which is, marriage and family values. So that's the least your religion should be doing, and that's it. And Christianity, having been subverted by liberalism, which was in turn subverted by feminism, is now unusable in the 21st century. Unless the government says, right, we're all going to be Christian, you have no choice, and if you question the Trinity, you'll be burnt at the stake again, just like your ancestors were. This is how it's going to be. Yes, they could do that in theory, and the thing is that there's no one who actually wants to do it, and they want to
Well, they
control us
don't have
in
a
in
clear
a
cut.
slightly different way.
They don't have clear cut rules about. They don't really have clear cut rules about it. I mean, I guess it's probably a different way of thinking, or like thinking like what exactly is the value of the religion itself in people's personal lives, and they want to keep it personal, I guess. But at the same time, they don't seem to want a bunch of Muslims coming over here keeping it personal and being engaged politically. So I can see that. But what are you going to do about these people who are actually converting to Islam because they see a failure of the church, and they're basically, by by the Catholic Church's definition, heretical Christians. Islam is a Christian heresy.
Hmm.
It's a Christian
Yeah.
heresy. So okay, so it fits in America. One more Christian heresy, and not only that, we let the Buddhists come in too, and that's even a bigger heresy because they reject Jesus altogether. I think Christians are better off with Muslims thinking, because Muslims are waiting for Jesus, and you can make an argument that whether or not you believe in the same nature of Christ, both groups are waiting for him, and assuming he really shows up, they're both going to be listening to what he says when he
Well,
comes.
yes. So the one thing that the three Abrahamic religions have in common is that there will be an end times and the Messiah will come.
Right.
And Jesus, he ain't going to be Jesus. Christians and Muslims say it will be Jesus, and Muslims say yes, and he'll be accompanied by the Mahdi, and Christians say the Antichrist will come along and there'll be a big fight. But in the end, it doesn't matter. But the point is that I think these people, I mean, I've dealt with all their issues. I've said, look, nobody's going to be forced into changing their religion. I'm not even Muslim, so why are you worried? And then they instantly forget, because I think they feel they have to think of me as Muslim so they can hate me all the more, and then pretend that Muslims want to behead them for not being Muslim. And this is how they want to keep their hatred and fear going. And that's why they always keep forgetting that I'm not Muslim, because they have to find reasons to reject it.
Well,
And we need to deliberately misunderstand
Claire,
me.
I think, Claire, the whole thing is really people being disingenuous, in other words, full of BS.
Mhm.
Because the real issue is, I don't think most people really care what the person next door thinks about the nature of God in the United States. They don't care as long as it's not going to bother them. As long as they're not going to have 500 Jehovah Witnesses ringing their doorbell all day long, they don't really care. Do you know what I mean? But what they do care about is the end of their white civilization, and the white civilization is going down the drain. If white people are all gone, obviously Western civilization is gone. So now the argument becomes, okay, we're going to blame it on Islam because that's a more politically correct way of talking about it. And we're going to turn it into a Christian ideology thing. What I'm saying is Islam is a Christian heresy. The United States is based on Christian heresy, whatever anybody says. So you can't say it doesn't belong here. You can
Yes,
try,
yeah.
but it doesn't belong here. But this is BS. So you want to save white culture, you want to say Western civilization, they have to solve replacement theory, and they're going to have to step up to the plate. Women are waiting until they're 40 years old to have kids because they're self-actualizing and trying to find themselves, and the men are behaving like that. And so then they can't figure out, why are the white women marrying these brown guys? Well, the brown guys act like they're interested in marriage, and they will commit and seal the deal with proposing. So then you get in marriage. The people who want to have kids are marrying these foreign guys, the women, the fertile wombs of the future of white people, because those are the people who are asking them. The ones interested, they're being asked. That doesn't mean white people aren't marrying other white people, because they are having kids. But this is what's going on. If they want white women to have white babies, they need to propose to them, take their chances, and get married. So what promotes this? What promotes marriage is, Islam and stuff. It's not promoting running around and having sex with everybody until you're 40. I mean, this is insane. The whole thing's crazy, really crazy. So,
Well, I
I
think
mean, we can be honest and say, look, we need more white people. Let's start making them. Or we can say we don't want these damn immigrants here because they're brown and they're taking our women, and the women are all race traitors. What the hell did they think was going to happen if they're refusing to get married? What did people think was going to happen? They're not getting married. What white person thinks they want to have kids if they can't take care of them financially? They don't think like that. It's the white people who aren't having the kids, right?
yes. So,
Right.
so we know that in the UK, the biggest group of people who converted to Islam were white working class women, because they
Right.
knew that they weren't going to go to university and get this nice job and marry the boss or anything like that. They knew that they had to make up their minds, and they voted with their feet. If they didn't want to be a pumped and dumped unmarried mother, they would have to find men who will take their marriage vows seriously, and hey, they happen to be Muslim, living in their neighborhoods, and that was why that's why the first big group of white people to convert were female and working class.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that. So it's
Yeah.
white working class who became Muslim, and they married foreigners, basically, is what you're saying.
Yes, because they knew if they only had sex with men of their own race, they wouldn't get married.
Oh, interesting.
And yeah, and I mean, you can look up the statistics if you don't believe me, but and the women who wanted to wear the niqab were actually white women who didn't want their former friends to say, "Hey, Sharon, why don't we, meet in the pub, this Friday," and that sort of thing. They didn't want to be seen by their, former, friends.
This is interesting. Interesting take. Yeah, I don't
But
know.
But I think eventually the penny will drop for white men when they realize that converting to Orthodox Christianity is not going to give them access to white women, that it'll only give them access to other white nationalists who thought that Orthodox Christianity is white. Because then they discover that Orthodox Christians aren't even supposed to go to enter places of worship that aren't Orthodox Christian. They're not even supposed to go into a Catholic church. And they're actually quite
Orthodox
mean
can't
about
go
Catholics and
anywhere else.
other kinds of Christians.
That's
These
right.
Orthodox
Orthodox can't
Christians.
go anywhere else. That's right.
So,
Okay, so
so
the problem with
they painted
converting to
themselves into a
Orthodoxy,
corner.
the problem with converting to Orthodoxy, I mean, from looking at it from this standpoint, is that okay, great, the guy's become Orthodox. Now he's going to an Orthodox church. It's an aged congregation. I don't think they call it congregation. The people are older. You need younger women. They need to be around. I don't know. It's people are shooting themselves in the foot. To me, it
Yeah, and
looks
I
like.
tell them, if you become Muslim, in theory, you can have up to 4 wives. They could be Jewesses, Christian women, and Muslim women of any race. You're actually expanding your marriage opportunities by converting to Islam. You can actually
Yeah,
still marry a Christian woman, but
you have a bigger pool. There is
yeah,
a bigger pool available. Yes, that's true. That's true. If I was a man, yeah, that's something to think about. I suppose if we're leaving out of the equation right now, obviously someone's personal belief and consciousness on. But people pick religions all the time for other reasons, and people want to act like they don't. They do. I plenty of people change their religions because they got married or because they like some aspect of it better.
Hmm.
It's not always this conscious idea of, oh, this is exactly what God is. That's not true. A lot of times
Yeah.
people get interested in religion for a totally unrelated reason.
Yes, I mean, most people probably convert in order to marry the spouse of their choice, and
I don't know if it's most, but I think that happens. I think I was at a Sufi gathering one time, and one of the women brought in this man she was engaged to, and she was trying to get him interested in Sufism because because she was, I guess, in the same order, and she wanted him to be kind of interested in it because her particular order, you didn't necessarily have to be outwardly identifiable as Muslim to be in it, and he would be like Muslim enough for
Mhm.
marriage, and that would be, that could be the consistent sort of, in the home sort of thing, and everybody would be happy with it because nobody, these particular people didn't wear scarves when they weren't at their stuff. They just dressed like how regular Americans dress. So yeah, I mean, people can look at that. People can do things like that. People can say, look, I'd like you to be at least half-assed my religion so that we have some continuity in the home. And in the United States, women have a lot of control on that. In the Mideast, the men do, but in the United States, women have more control over this. The women have the biggest influence on religion on their children, not the fathers. And a lot of people
Yes,
don't
because
realize
the
that.
women rear the children. I mean, actually, women have
Well,
so much control.
rear the children, and in the West, it's all about uh, do it fast and make money, and it's all day long. They're not going home in the afternoon and spending social time with their children at lunchtime like they do in a lot of Muslim countries. They come home at lunchtime. Their big meal of the day is lunch, not dinner. So they're not tired yet. Everyone talks for a little while, then they take these afternoon naps and go back to work. So they actually have more family time than people do in the West. But because everyone's working in the West now, people are not bringing up their own children. They're being brought up in collectives like a daycare or something else. And these things all created their own social problems.
Yeah,
But
yeah. I mean, the thing is that the men who complain about feminism, they don't care about the abolition of no fault divorce. Oh, I've just remembered you don't want it abolished either. But then why would a man buy a house for a woman he hates and then be kicked out of his own house by her?
well, it's gotten to the point now, and it's this way in Muslim countries now. People are really thinking about the economics and trying to figure out how they can control it all and keep their spouse from having any. And so now we have people that are so distrustful of marriage, even in the West. How can we get married and keep the wife out of my finances? And then the woman, a lot of them make pretty darn good money now. Okay, so how are we going to keep the guy from having anything? Right? So you're going to whip
So
out a prenuptial and everyone gets mad. Well, prenuptial agreements is part of Islam.
yeah, or
There
a
is a
marriage contract, a marriage
right,
contract.
right. Yeah.
And when you have a contract, that a marriage contract, then it means that divorce is breach of a term of the marriage contract, and then and that's how you impute fault into divorce.
Yes.
So if you want to divorce your spouse, you don't just say, "Oh, well, I just got a bit tired and irritated. I'm off," because this is the reality of no fault divorce. You don't even have to give a reason. So you still,
Well,
well, the law
it's not
still
just that.
requires.
It's the divorce rate is so high. If you have kids and you stay home with your kids, you're basically uh, destroyed yourself for being able to take care of yourself if something happens. I mean, it is a problem. It is a
Yeah, yeah.
problem.
I mean, but we have to take into account why people are behaving the way they are. You know, if men still don't want to abolish no fault divorce, then of course it's not going to be a good bargain for them to get married, is it? So they'll never solve the problem. They will hate
Well,
the
they're
idea of
still going to
marriage.
go to court. People are still going to go to court and fight over assets. I
Sure,
mean,
sure,
that's
but
going to
but it's
happen.
a principle of a thing. If you won't if you won't abolish no fault divorce, then obviously anyone, either party, can just divorce each other without fear of any social consequences. So that is intended to normalize divorce, right? So what we really want is for people to take marriage seriously and therefore divorce seriously. And it's like, well, if you're divorced, it means you've got a failed marriage, and that's a bad thing. There must be something wrong with you. We
Well,
want
what's
to
what?
stigmatize divorce, and if we refuse to do that, the problem won't be solved.
Look, if people want if men want women, right? The women need to not be involved in giving it out for free. Okay, let's put it that way.
No, so you need to slut shame. So you need to deal with the fornication
They need
aspect
to
of.
quit doing it. It is to the woman's advantage to not run around with a bunch of different men. It's absolutely to her advantage. And if all women withheld, the men's choice would either be go gay or get married. And then they would start proposing. Okay? And then if you make porn illegal, they can't sit alone with their little computers watching porn, doing sex with themselves or whatever the hell it is they're doing. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
This is degenerate. So that's what needs to happen. So the question is, how are you going to get it to happen?
You have
It's
to
not
say,
going to.
you have to challenge feminism, because this is the unofficial religion. And the things that can become unofficial sacred cows and unofficial belief systems, and people, because they don't acknowledge it, you know, we don't seriously take the idea that feminism is the unofficial Western religion. In fact, you know what? I've been playing with AI, and with a range of different AIs, and China has DeepSeek. And what it does is it actually answers your questions, and then I guess it sort of reads its own answer and then deletes it if it thinks that it's, you know, approaching controversial territory. So I did actually ask Chinese AI DeepSeek about feminism, and I saw it, you know, generating the answer, and then it kind of said, "Oops." And then it deleted everything and said, "Can we talk about something else?" So feminism is also controversial in China, and I'm sure everywhere else, in Japan, in, you know, in any country where, you know, men and women are supposed to have sex and children with each other. So I'm afraid it has infected, feminism has infected everyone, without them consciously thinking, oh, actually, you know, operating orthodoxy is feminism. Because how does feminism function? It basically functions by saying you can have sex with whoever as long as you don't get pregnant. No, not even that. It just says um, no, no sexual offense is created as long as we have sex with another
Sex
consenting
isn't a
adult.
sex before marriage isn't a sin. That's what people used to say back in the
It
day.
is or it isn't.
They used to say it's not a sin. Based
I
on
mean,
what? Did they decide it's
fornication
not a
is supposed
sin?
to be a mortal
How?
sin.
Well, it's. I'm just saying. This is people. They promoted the idea that it wasn't sinful in behavior. That a lot of these despotic things and ideas were not sins. Okay, but who's defining sin? I mean, obviously they're not listening to the Catholic Church on this. I
No,
mean, the Catholics. I mean, I mean, you got people taking their kids in for baptism, and the parents aren't married. You know, and then parents get married after they have their kids, or you know, there's so the laws are not. The laws are not. A lot of the laws in the United States are not functioning laws that make marriage itself easier. They're making it at odds. Like everything's being put at odds and conflict with each other. Like there's
Yes, so
nothing good out.
everybody's confused. So when they're
Hmm?
confused, it's sort of like, well, I can do it as long as there's no law against it, and there's no law against it, or there actually was a law against it, because as I understand it, adultery is supposedly a criminal offence in quite a few American states, but in practice nobody is prosecuted for it.
Old laws on the book. Well, you would have to prove it. I mean, adultery is illegal in Muslim countries too, and you have to prove it. You have to be able to prove it. And if people are not going to flaunt stuff in the wider society itself, it becomes hard to prove. In the West, you got people doing things like revenge dating. I mean, I don't know. This stuff is like insane. To me, it looks just like everybody has just gone insane. They've adopted behaviors that are not going to be productive in the long run for themselves, and they're debasing themselves. And
Yes,
then they'll
so
say,
just to be made clearly, and the only way to make it clear is to say what we really want. The only way the patriarchy can be restored is by treating unmarried parents as sex offenders, and then they'll just sort of have fits of the vapors, and but they'll at least react, and that's why it's so necessary to point this out. Because if they don't understand this, then they're not going to even engage with the arguments, right? And of course, they'll say, "Oh, this is archaic. This is the 21st century. People don't believe in all that nonsense anymore." You know, but I mean, if you're complaining about immigration, then surely you have to acknowledge that immigration is the result of not having enough of a labour force to do what still needs to be done by people, by men.
The immigration problem is caused by governments itself not serving the needs of their own people. Now you can have immigrants into a country, the country decides they want some immigrants and they can come, that's one thing. Crashing borders, coming in, everyone putting them up in hotels, rewarding them for essentially breaking the law, coming into the country, and now you're going to get more social services than citizens of a country is bizarre. And it is destroying the labor class in England.
Mhm.
And already we have labor has left the United States pretty much, except for construction and this sort of stuff where the person needs to be present here, by outsourcing to other countries. The problems going on are not just because of religion or brown people coming. Of course people want to come in, they want to go to the economic zone, they can make some money, so they're trying to escape problems in their own countries or whatever, try to come here. That is not weird. What's weird is the government has done nothing about it, because the government itself is not serving the people, and it's serving some idea of a one world global government in some way. I mean, you can call it Zionist, you can call it, some kind of combination of the old aristocrats of Europe. I mean, you can come up with a definition, but basically Zionism is what's affecting the United States. So this is the problem. So nobody will even identify the problem. I mean, some people are, but people don't want to identify this, and they want to be politically correct. White people, to save Western civilization, need to be in a predominantly white population. That's
Well,
just
then you
how
need
it
your
is.
own working class. That is the thing. A nation or any society, in order to keep itself in existence, they need, they need men and women, they need the rich and the poor and the old and the young, and they need a working class.
Yeah, and and the working guys, the white working guys, cannot compete with illegals coming in and undercutting them, because they're not paying all these taxes and all this stuff. I can get Mexicans to come over here, from Mexico. I'm talking about Mexicans from Mexico, not a Mexican from here. I can get Mexicans to come over and do some gardening cheaper than I can with the white guys who have a business because they have to pay all these taxes.
Exactly. So people need to acknowledge the problem, but obviously it can't be solved, by tomorrow, even with the best will in the world. People, need to phase all these policies. You could, even if you wanted to get rid of all of them, you can't just get rid of all of them, because some of them are in, essential services, in agriculture, in, working in slaughterhouses, doing all the work that nobody really wants to do.
Well, I think they are trying to phase it. I think they did, in the US anyway, they did look at that and say, okay, we're going to have to phase this.
Yeah,
So, first you're getting all the people that work in a 7-Eleven store or something. I mean, okay, that's going to really change it all. But, they're doing that and they're using that to scare people. And then they're going after the next group. And it has had an effect. It has.
yes.
It has had an effect, even though they haven't gone after everybody. And eventually they'll have to go after all the clothing manufacturing in the United States, because they have a huge number of illegals working in that.
Yes, because it's the business classes, right? It's the business people who say to the government, we haven't got the labor to run our businesses, to harvest our crops, to, do the necessary work in agriculture, etc., etc. And it's like, we pay your campaign funds, so can you do something about it? And the government, I guess, has to say yes.
They can just start deporting, and then these people that are collecting, welfare and stuff, say you're going to have to get a job, and then they don't have any skills. They can go in there and learn how to use a sewing machine and start manufacturing clothes. I mean, this is ridiculous. What used to go on in this country was, if you didn't have a job, you had to move to where the job was. You weren't sitting collecting payments. You weren't collecting some kind of government subsidized housing so you could stay where you were at in unemployment. It's creating an underclass. So we don't want to.
That's why slavery was the ancient welfare state. That was what it really was. If you really can't put a roof over your own head and feed yourself, you sold yourself into slavery where somebody was prepared to accommodate and feed you, and that was the whole. That was how workfare worked. That's the only economical way of ensuring that you didn't pay people to sit at home and watch TV all day.
Because you just don't have to do it. You just slowly stop doing it, and then you make those jobs available, and then people will go apply for them. I mean, I would apply for those kind of jobs.
Yes, but the point is, the thing is, I know, Carol, you still want democracy, and democracy makes all these considerations crucial. It's like, well, we can't say all these unpopular things, because then we'll never be voted in. So we never say these things, right? That's why it won't get done under democracy, because we already know that, well, at least 40% of children born today are born of unmarried parents. So, and obviously these statistics are electorally significant, and no Democratic politician is ever going to tackle the problem of widespread illegitimacy and all the social problems it causes.
Well, it would help white people,
UBI or any of that.
White people becoming Muslim, that would help. But replacement
theory
is the big problem. The replacement theory is the big problem. You cannot let hordes and hordes of immigrants coming into a country.
Nobody will ever do anything about it if there is no leadership. And I'm saying, if you want to keep the current system, you will never get the leadership you need to say, this is wrong, that won't work, that's unsustainable. Because if you want to keep the democracy going, you have all these sacred cows that are taboo to challenge and point out. And so you'll never solve the problem, even in theory.
Okay, but we have the ideals. We want to keep our ideals. I don't see this as a big. I don't see it as okay, now we have to turn and we're going to have to adopt some sort of theological fascism. No, I don't agree with that.
Okay, so how are you going to do it? How are you going to do it in a way that make people believe that you got the theory right? even if they hate it. You just need to show you understand the problem. And if you're saying, let's carry on voting, then I don't think people will
I'm
think you
saying
understand the problem.
whatever is going to motivate white people to stand up for their civilization, fight for it, enforce the
They're not
government.
going to
It's
fight
going
for
to.
it.
They will eventually. I mean, if people in France are going, they're going to end up with huge riots in the United States if this doesn't stop. Huge riots, Claire.
Okay, people are talking about rioting just
Well,
because
they already
the
shot
weather's so
Charlie
good.
Kirk. Who
The
did
weather's
that? I
so
don't know who
good.
did that. I don't know who shot him.
There's also a problem of the average age of a Western nation, because the higher the average age, the less likely they are to fight a revolution, right? I think we need to understand that. When Iran had their Iranian Revolution in the Islamic Revolution in 1979, I'm sure the average age was in the 20s. And I know Iran has a rising average age because they're not having children either, because Iranian couples are obviously cohabiting and fornicating, and that
Okay.
would have the effect
Okay.
of lowering the birth rate.
Okay, you got Europeans. Okay, so you can get a bunch of Swedes who are all DNA Swedish. I would assume that's still you can be in England and you have all these DNA people who are basically collective DNA of the British Isles, right? The United States, we have hybrid white people. Now, I got called a race traitor and stuff and banned off of the the white power websites, not websites, spaces and stuff, because I'm considered a race traitor and stuff. And somebody said, well, what are you married to? And I said, well, is he white? I said, well, he's white enough. Because I'm sorry, in the United States, we have a category that's called white enough. Okay? We do, whether people like it or not. We have a category that's white enough, and the ones who are white enough can do a lot to save Western civilization. They can.
But
We
it's
have
not the
Hispanics.
color, it's
We have Hispanics who are white enough over here. Not
are
everybody.
white enough to support secular Quranism. That is ultimately the
I mean,
$1 million
white enough that if they're marrying white people, they're producing children that appear to be generally white people that will identify with Western culture.
I know,
They're white
but
enough to save
half
it,
of
and
white.
it's the DNA. It's not the one drop contaminates rule.
Yeah,
It's
I
what's
mean, in the UK, we
dominant.
have something called IC1, which is basically these racial categories. IC1 is white, IC2 is Mediterranean, IC3 is black, IC4 is Asian, IC5 is Oriental, and the police would say IC1 male coming your way wearing
Yeah, I know.
something
I've
like that.
seen
So
that.
it's like if they look white, then they're white.
No, I'm not saying
I
just
mean,
if they look white. I'm saying if they think what if
yeah, but
they
their values are
generally
something else altogether. Their values.
Hispanic
People will make
people,
this. They can't.
Claire, Hispanic Catholics who look, they're just if the United States doesn't accept a category of white enough in order to save this country, it's going to lose.
Yes, I know, but you're not making the.
I don't think people have to
Race
become
and
Muslim to
values
save
are
this country.
different. Do you understand? Race and values are different. So
I
you can
understand
you
that,
can
but
be
I don't
white.
believe. Listen. I don't believe it's all values. I believe a big part of it is DNA. I believe Western civilization was not created just because they had the Christian church and there was some idea that this has created a secular and a religion. No, I don't believe that's the only thing that created Western civilization.
Okay, well, it's a
I believe
combination
it's DNA. Listen, I believe the
of.
DNA of white people excel under a certain environment.
Okay, okay. I mean, I think
If
we'll
you've
just
got
argue
someone
until
who is
the cows come
no,
home about
Claire,
this.
you're not
It
listening.
doesn't
Okay,
matter.
I don't agree. You're not listening.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Yes, it
It's how you
does.
think. It's how you act, and you're not taking that into account because you
No,
think
I am
when
taking
something doesn't look
everything.
right,
I'm
you're going
taking
to
it
do.
all into
You're doing
account,
this.
Claire.
No. Most of them are you
Claire,
just
I'm
speaking
taking
to
it all
Jim.
into account. You don't like my conclusions. I don't
No,
think it
no, I'm saying
matters
it's
if
unhelpful. It's unhelpful because you're
okay.
not taking into account.
I don't think it matters if somebody is 100% DNA white.
Yeah, because
As
if they
long as
think
that
and act the
person
wrong way, then
listen,
what is the
listen.
point of them?
Oh God. Clear, because it's not all values that you teach. It's DNA. White people.
Okay, so you're going to take a DNA test. You're going to make them take a DNA
No, you're
test.
not
Are
no,
you
you're
really?
not. Okay, I can't
Okay,
talk to you
so
when
you
you do
ask them
this.
questions. What do you believe? What do you want? There's no need to take a stupid DNA test.
They need to seal up the borders. If
Yeah,
someone's here
how can you
illegally, they
do
need to
that?
go.
How can you do any of those things when there's no leadership and not even the idea of solving the problem? You've spoken to Jim. You know how useless he is.
I'm not
He's
for
just waiting.
no,
He's just
Claire.
waiting to die. He's just waiting to die. Leave me alone to my Catholicism and my Tridentine Church. I'm not even going to address my mind to the problem. I'm going to deliberately misunderstand you and distort everything you say and just pretend that Catholicism rules the world. That's his attitude.
Eventually, what'll happen is there will be something that happens.
Yeah, so we have to make it happen. You have to push them. You can't just hang around and make vague statements and say, oh, we can just carry on voting and they'll get the point. I mean,
Well, I'm not
is
promoting
that what
fascism, Claire.
you're hoping for?
Claire, I'm not going to promote fascism. I'm not going to promote monarchy
Okay,
in the
well then
United
I
States.
guess nothing is going to work then.
Well, then maybe
You're not
not if
even going
that's
to
how
make
you
the
think,
point.
but you're
You're
not
not even going to make
American.
the.
Doesn't matter. You're not American.
No, it doesn't
Hey, the
matter.
Americans are going to have to figure this out.
Okay, so
Okay.
well, go carry on. Who's going to listen to you? You're just an old lady. You have
Nobody listens to
nothing
me.
concrete to propose.
Okay. Nobody listens
What
to me.
are you proposing other than carry on voting? What are you proposing?
Saying people need to decide to undermine the government at this time. How are they going to do it?
They need to at least ask questions. So they need to.
Well, people
change the
are starting to
narrative.
ask questions, but they're also deflecting. I mean, it is a mess over here. It is a mess over here.
Yes, so you need to push them into it. Like, well, the founding fathers were not Christian; they were heretics, right?
Yeah, but people aren't usually. They're not being that. Yeah, but people aren't.
And then the next thing is, well, if you really think you're Christian, aren't you a little concerned that you're guilty of the mortal sin of idolatry? And if they say we don't give a damn, then it's like, well, so obviously you're a hypocrite, an atheist pretending to be Christian. Why are you doing that? Why are you pretending to
For
worship?
some reason, in the United States, a lot of people sort of don't care about their religion until they get married.
Yeah, because they don't really believe. That's what I'm trying to tell you. They're all hypocrites. These Jews, these Christians, these Muslims, they are hypocrites.
Stop yelling at me. Okay? I'm white. I don't want to sit in a room with a bunch of people yelling. We hate that. Okay?
I am inviting you to answer.
No, you're not inviting. You're trying to
you haven't got an
me.
answer. So you're just going to go on and say, let's carry on voting. Let's be white. How are you going to be white?
Discussed voting. I haven't even discussed voting. We haven't
Well,
brought
what are
any
you
of that up.
saying?
You're changing the subject.
I'm not changing. I want you to say what you actually want your fellow Americans to do.
Well, I want them to run these illegal immigrants out, and I want them to seize their government back. That's what has to happen.
Going to do it.
Well, I don't know, Claire, because
They
nobody
have to change
listens
what's
to me.
inside their minds, don't they? They have to change their belief system. They have to acknowledge that, oh, the current thing that we have, it's not working. Don't you think
I
they
try
need
to
to
talk
do
to
that?
people
Elise?
about that. I try to talk about that people all the time when I'm
Yes,
out and stuff, but they don't
so obviously
listen.
they're not getting it. And how do you?
Well, what are you suggesting? A fascist revolution over here?
No, I can't suggest anything of the sort. All I can do is ask them what they really, really want and what they really, really believe. So, if anybody you're talking to claims to be Christian, then you have to accuse them of idolatry. And if they say they don't care, then accuse them of hypocrisy.
The focus isn't on Christians, Claire. The focus is you have a Western
Okay. And
civilization.
if they say they're atheists, then you have to explain to them why liberalism has to be taken out with the trash.
Do you agree that the culture and civilization is somewhat fluid?
Of course.
Okay.
That's why
Okay.
we have this
Okay.
idea of eternal and universal laws of God, but they've never changed. Culture and gender is fluid, right? Yeah. Sometimes you want to be,
Okay.
sometimes
All
you want to
right.
be that.
Do
But
you
the laws
agree?
have to be eternal
Listen
and
to me,
universal.
please. Do you agree that DNA has something to do with how the culture developed? That it's not just environment? Do you agree that it's also DNA?
I'm reminded of Shakespeare, and he said something about the nature-nurture debate that will never, ever be settled. So,
But do you agree? Do you agree that that's so? I mean, even Buddhism talks about it like inheriting the emotions and stuff from your forefathers. But some religions do kind of discuss this idea. But do you agree that it's also DNA? That it's not just environment?
yes, it's a combination of the two.
Okay,
I mean, I'm
it's a
happy to acknowledge
combination.
that it's 50-50.
It's a combination.
So it's
It's
inconclusive.
Claire, listen to me, please. What I'm saying is the white nationalists in the United States, you've got the Christian white nationalists, and then you got like the pagan reconstructionist white nationalists, and then you got the white nationalists that's
Yeah,
just
they're
like, oh, hell.
stupid.
Okay, you think they're stupid.
Yes.
Okay, listen, they need to, in the United States, drop this crap of the one drop rule, like one drop black makes you black, and think the majority DNA of somebody, is it white or not? And the majority,
even white nationalists are
Claire,
not
let me
proposing.
finish talking or I'm going. That's it. I don't want to sit and scream in a room. I don't want to do that anymore.
I'm letting you ramble the whole time, so carry on.
Okay, it was nice talking to you, Claire.
Let's have a guess at what Carol is trying to say. I'm giving the most charitable interpretation of what she's trying to say. So, I don't think there is a white nationalist organization saying you can only join us if you take a DNA test, and if there's one drop of black in you, you're going to get kicked out. So I don't know why she's going on about this at such length. The point is, we want people to agree on some obvious argument, such as it would be a good idea for our government to support marriage because marriage is eugenic, and it would stop this degeneracy of people getting stupider and weaker at each passing generation because of their unmarried mothers who deprive them of a father and subject them to the sexual abuse of their unsuitable boyfriends. So this is something that I think anyone can agree to, whether they're white or non-white. So I don't know why Carol keeps belaboring this stupid, bloody fucking point. So if you want people to agree with you, you choose the most easy to agree point instead of focusing on fucking stupid arseholing race and then saying, white values. It's like, what? Well, when people say that, they're just talking about middle class values, right? That's what they mean. And the moment you say white, you identify yourself as a white nationalist, which is the lowest of the low. And in any case, white American women are not interested in marrying low status white nationalists. So I'm trying to find out what it is that makes Carol keep going back to race. So I'm happy to acknowledge that, you can get different kinds of white people. So obviously, the white people who crossed the Atlantic to make America great were the more enterprising kind of European than the Europeans who stayed in Europe. I'm happy to concede, and then you have a different kind of white person who is sort of Irish and German and Catholic and that kind of thing. So I get it that you will have a different strain of white people that you won't find in Europe, even though physically they might resemble Europeans. So it is their ancestry of arriving in America, fighting the Indians, a pioneering spirit, getting in their wagons and circling them and whatever, and the American Civil War. And obviously Americans have had a different experience, a different history than Europeans, and this is what forms the American character. I do not deny that. So this endless obsessing about race is unproductive. So while I can see that white people cling to Christianity to preserve their middle class status, that's the only reason why I see white people clinging to Christianity. It's not that they believe it or anything. It's sort of, I'm middle class because I go to church, and middle class people go to church, and trailer trash don't. It's just that. Because if you follow the streams of Paul Vanter Clay, you will know that the people who follow him are not believing Christians. In fact, if you know what he's trying to do, he's organising these estuary meetings, and he actually says, oh, don't worry, folks, you won't be, there will be no J-bomb. You won't get anyone preaching Jesus and saying the name of Jesus lots and lots to you. So don't worry about that. Come to our estuary meetings and we can talk about stuff. And I keep thinking, why do you need to go to Paul Vanter Clay to talk about the things you want to talk about? Why? You can talk about anything on the internet with anybody without having to go anywhere. So if you want to stay middle class, going to church is not going to help. Why on earth do you think that going to a different church on Sundays is going to change the politics of your country? Obviously, you have to stand up and be counted by actually participating in politics and making political statements and not just going to church and singing hymns. So, sadly for Americans who must be now very frightened and angry, they will be wondering what they should be saying if they don't want to be, shot in the throat. at some university campus. So this is something for Americans to consider, how much risk they're going to take. And what I would have tried to explain to Carol is that fundamentally, if you don't believe that good will be rewarded and evil punished, it doesn't matter what race you are. You will be easy to threaten and easy to bribe. And you, as an atheist, will not be prepared to make any sacrifice or take any risk to do the right thing or speak the truth, and certainly not speak truth to power. And I will end by saying that the death of Charlie Kirk, the killing of Charlie Kirk, could have beneficial effects if people understand how important it is to say the right thing, or at least say what you believe to be the truth. Now, obviously, he has said a whole bunch of things that a whole bunch of people could hate him for. We don't even know who actually killed him. The presumption is that somebody of the left killed him. But really, if white people or Muslims who don't like his support of Zionism say they don't care that he died or he had it coming, this is still not the same as actually killing him, and we still don't know who killed him. It could have been a Ukrainian, it could have been someone from the deep state doing this on purpose to frighten Americans. But ultimately, in order to do anything, there must be moral and political leadership, and therefore somebody prepared to take the risk of saying the unpopular thing and possibly be killed just for saying the thing that they believe to be the truth. Now, what I find so infuriating about Carol is that she's got all these sacred cows surrounding her. She's not going to support a one-party state. She wants to carry on voting. She doesn't support no-fault divorce. She goes on about race when it can have no effect on the political direction of America, because ultimately, whatever race you are, black or brown or yellow or black, you, in theory, have the free will to choose a different religion to the one that you inherited from your parents. Now, the people who I think find hardest to change their minds about is if that person in question has already changed their religion and it was still the wrong one. So I guess if you're a Jew and you've converted to Christianity, you're probably going to be reluctant to admit that you converted to the wrong religion. And but I'm saying we have to admit our mistakes, because that is a survival strategy and a half. If we don't admit our mistakes, we are basically lying to ourselves and doubling down on our error that will lead to disaster. So while this stream is extremely disappointing, I had hoped that Carol would at least, okay, I don't even know what she's trying to say. Other than this white enough thing. If all she wants to do is be middle class, you can be middle class with a whole bunch of people who are not white. And I guess you just need to define what you mean by people who behave in a white way. I think all she means is being bourgeois, being middle class. So being middle class, in my view, means what? Taking piano lessons, ballet lessons, tennis classes, this sort of thing. These are, one of the badges of being middle class. And if that's what she's worried about, then it's a matter of income and status. Now, for the country as a whole, you basically need a government prepared to support the institution of marriage, because it is, in fact, eugenic. And to the extent that I am trying to agree with Carol about your DNA, if you're not a bastard, then you have the DNA of parents who are married. And to the extent that if you're a bastard, then you are inheriting the genes of a sex offender, of two sex offenders. And if they were never married to each other, then I guess, your parents stay a sex offender until, they say, yes, then you will be a bastard for the rest of your life. Now, if you care about these things, you should obviously support marriage, because the whole point of supporting marriage is that it is a child protection scheme that is intended to protect the child. So if you have two parents, if you're living with two parents and one of them is abusive, then you have at least the possibility that your non-abusive parent will protect you. But if you're a bastard of an unmarried mother, then and if she's abusive, then your goose is pretty much cooked. So I would have thought that any reasonable person should be able to support the principle of marriage. And that was all I hoped Carol would do, and she refused to even do that. So, I don't know where it's going. I hope you will at least comment on what you thought you heard, because really, it isn't particularly helpful to argue about DNA at this stage. Religion is not about DNA. It is about the values that you're supposed to affirm and the beliefs you are supposed to hold. And what's the point of this white enough idea? If you look white enough, then I guess you're white. What else are you going to make of it other than to say that, is it enough to be white enough if you don't hold the values you are supposed to hold as an honest, reasonable, and moral and decent person? What's the point of looking like this or like that if you can't even understand a simple argument about the difference between values and the color of your skin?